In this video, I'm going to take you through a very important process in Wild Rift, and that is finding your perfect main. Let's get into it. So before we discuss how to find your main champion in Wild Rift, it's really important to consider the different classes of champions. Once you have a good understanding of what the different classes are, you can evaluate them based on what your playstyle prefers and then pick one from there. In this video, I will discuss the 7 different types of champion classes and what the roles of each classes are, along with what kind of champions are found in them. Once you find a champion class that identifies with your playstyle, I'll go over some champion suggestions that I have for that class that you've chosen. But in order for this video to help you find your main, remember this. You are looking to identify one of these 7 champion classes that identifies with your playstyle, and it seems like something that would actually be enjoyable for you to play. So once you find a class that you think you want to try out, keep it in the back of your mind and wait until the end of the video, because that is when I'm going to give 2 champion suggestions per class so you can try them out. And the ultimate goal here is to get you a little closer to finding your main. So let's begin by discussing the assassin class and what roles they play. Some of the popular assassins include Fizz, Akali, Zed, champions like that. Now, these champions have one main objective, and that is to get kills. Assassins excel at getting kills. Their kits are often loaded with a bunch of damage and just burst overall. Like, for example, Zed's kit is entirely built around getting into a fight very quickly, dealing your burst damage, and getting out. So with these assassin champions, you're going to be finding them mostly in the mid lane role, and the reason for that is because the mid lane is the center of the map and they like to roam around the map to impact the other lanes. So if, for example, the Dragon lane is overextended, meaning the enemies are very close to your side of the map, you can actually go for a gank onto the Dragon lane and kill them. Since you're an assassin, it's a lot easier than if you were another type of champion, such as a control mage or something else in the mid lane, which we'll talk about later. So the assassin might be for you if you like just getting a lot of kills, getting in fights quickly, getting out, and oftentimes getting a kill, because that's your champion's strength, getting kills and dealing a lot of damage. Another category of champion that's commonly seen in the mid lane would be the mages. Now there's two main types of mages. There's the burst mages and the control mages. So with these burst mages, it's pretty self-explanatory. They're all about bursting you within a few seconds with their abilities. With their stuns, they're able to stun you. If there's, teammates nearby, you can all contribute to damaging the enemy while they're stunned. And these burst mages are just all about skirmishes, fights, and just taking out champions really quick, similar to assassins, except these are kind of the longer range assassins. And we got the control mages. These are interesting. These include champions like Orianna and Ziggs. These champions are very, very important in team fights. When a team is fighting for a dragon or a baron, these control mages can use their long range abilities and long range auto attacks to kind of poke the enemy away from the objective or away from a damaged teammate. So these types of champions, these control mages, are just really good in team fights. They're good at zoning off your opponent, and they often have a very strong laning phase. So is your main gonna be a mage champion? Some of the questions that you want to ask yourself is, do you like having high amounts of AP burst damage in the later game? Do you like having kind of that controller aspect of these control mages? Helps you have a strong laning phase, keeps the enemies away from you when you have good mechanics, of course. If you don't have very good mechanics as a control mage, then they might just jump right on top of you and you're kind of dead, because control mages are not that strong up close. Alright, so the next category of champions we're going to cover are the fighter champions. Fighter champions are typically found in the Baron lane, however a select few of them are also in the mid lane. Now these champions have pretty good damage, they have pretty good health, and they're usually melee. They're all about getting inside of the fight, getting all up close and personals, and just dishing out that damage and staying alive as long as they can. So fighter champions include like Yasuo or Garen or Olaf. Some of the different types of fighters include ones with higher damages and lower health, or some of them have higher health and lower damages. There's a lot of different ways that you can classify fighters, but just know that they're all about getting up close in melee range and dealing as much damage as they can. Note that these champions are pretty melee attack based. Oftentimes you're going to build like crit on them, or just heavy amounts of AD items like, Steric's Gauge and Bloodthirster and Infinity Edge. These kind of high damage, some of them high health items, depending on the type of fighter you're playing. So yeah, these are kind of high damage, high reward if you get in the middle of a fight type champions. The next category we're going to cover are the tanks. These are primarily found in the Baron lane, however certain kinds of tanks are also supports. So I'm going to divide this up into two categories similar to what I did with the mages. So there are two different types of tanks. There are the engage tanks and there are the juggernaut type tanks. And then there's also some tanks that are kind of combinations of the two, and some of them just very unique, but we're not going to get into that because there's so few of them. So the juggernaut tanks, these are the ones that if they get fed, they're going to 1v9 the game. These are champions like Nasus and Darius that are just almost impossible to kill up close past the 20-minute mark in the game because they just get so strong off of kills. Nasus starts stacking and he gets all that crazy healing. And Darius over here solo killing the Baron laner over and over and over because he's just getting stronger and stronger and snowballing. So these are the juggernauts. You don't fight them up close. They have very strong 1v1. However, they're very easy to poke. So champions like Marksman, which we're going to talk about later, they're actually pretty good against these type of champions because it's hard for these juggernauts to close the gap and get really close to somebody. It's all about them coming to you, but if they do come to you, they're dead. So those are the juggernauts. The other ones are the engage tanks. Now these are also in the support role, so champions like Braum, champions like Malphite, Alistar, even Blitzcrank. These are all tanks that also have an engage mechanism that's just very important for initiating team fights and just stunning the enemies or bringing them to you, like Blitzcrank's hook or, Alistar's knockup, or even Malphite's knockup. Braum is just kind of a tank who's got a little bit of knockups in his kit and slows and whatnot. These are important. Tanks, although maybe not as popular as some of the other roles, tanks are very important, especially in team fights. So if you like helping your team out, taking the damage, taking the hits for your team, tanks might be for you. Alright, so the next type of champion we're going to talk about are the Enchanters. Some people just call these like the supports, but Enchanters are specifically ranged supports, usually with a lot of utility like CC and just healing. Champions like Soraka with her silence, or Janna with her, just things that Janna does. Janna has a lot of stuff in her kit. And also champions like Sona with the healing and the movement speed. Just these team buff champions that usually don't do a lot themselves, but they're more about empowering their teammates to make them stronger, to heal them, to make them faster like Sona, or to make them big like Lulu. Lulu just makes, the teammates or herself just very strong momentarily. That's her ultimate. So these champions, the Enchanters, almost always in the support role. However, they are sometimes seen in the Baron lane. It's very unusual. Like sometimes you'll see a Lulu Baron lane. It's a weird pick, but it does happen. But yeah, these are the Enchanters. So if you like giving your team just buffs and perks, speed, healing, all this kind of stuff, Enchanters may be for you. Alright, next category, we're going to talk about the main damage dealers on the team. We got the Marksman. So these guys are all about damage, scaling, buying their items, getting the gold, and just taking over the late game and carrying their team to victory. Okay, so the Marksman category of champions are usually seen as AD carries, which are played in the Dragon lane. They're the duo with the support, but some of them are actually not AD carry. They could still be a Marksman, but not an AD carry, such as Vayne, who actually sometimes plays as a Baron laner because she's ranged and she has actually a good amount of mobility, so she can poke a lot of those tanky top laners who can't really get up close and kill her. But most of the time, Marksmen are going to be AD carries. Now, how do you know if you're somebody who is an AD carry main? So AD carry players are usually very mechanically gifted. They have good mechanics. They're good at positioning themselves in team fights. Because remember, AD carries, it's got a lot of damage, but they're very squishy. So you got to be careful. You can get pretty much one shot in the late game by almost anyone on the other team because they're so squishy and they don't build health at all. They only build damage. So yeah, if you're very good at mechanics and you just like carrying team fights and you like scaling and just doing absurd amounts of damage in the later game, then yeah, AD carry is probably a role that you'll really enjoy. And you'll surely find a champion there that you do end up sticking with. Okay, so the last category that I want to talk about, which also is a role, I just decided that this category is so unique that I don't really want to put it in with any of the other ones, and this is the jungle. The jungle is also a role. So yeah, we got the junglers such as Shyvana, Vi, Lee Sin. There's a lot of different junglers, and I'm actually going to divide this category up into two different kinds. So some of these junglers I like to call the ganking junglers, and the other type I like to call like the scaling 1v9 type junglers, which basically means like the carry junglers. So what are these different junglers? So the ganking junglers are junglers like Lee Sin and Vi. These are very early game junglers, meaning they're strong in the early game, but they're not that strong in the later game. But in the early game, they have very strong ganking power, which means they can, flank behind the enemy and kill them with their teammates. They just have kits that are very good at gap closing and getting very close to the enemies and dealing a lot of burst damage. But of course, these champions, they don't do well in the late game, so they have a strong early and they're able to get a lot of nice ganks, kills, and assists. But later game, they're not as good. Now, on the other hand, we have what I like to call the carry junglers. Now, these are champions like Master Yi or Shyvana, where their early game, they're not super concerned with taking a ton of fights and ganking a lot. They're more concerned with just farming up and getting strong, getting their items, getting their XP, and leveling up their abilities. And then later in the game, they come online and take over, like Master Yi, the pentakill machine. When the game gets too long and Master Yi is still farming, and if he's got a few kills already, then he is just going to turn into a late game beast. So yeah, two types of junglers. Junglers in general though, you're a jungler if you just like impacting the map as much as possible. Junglers are the only role that don't have like a dedicated lane or a dedicated spot that they need to be. So they're able to just roam around their side, you know, killing neutral monsters, getting golden XP, and as they see an opportunity, they're able to gank a lane, or not gank a lane, or take an objective, or not take an objective. They get to do whatever they want. They're the jungler. They have a very, very strong influence on the game as well. So if you like having a strong influence on your game, whether you win or lose, the jungler is probably the category of champion that you want to main. Alright, so those are the 7 categories of champions. Let's go over them real quickly once more. There is the assassin, the fighter, the mage, the tank, the marksman, the enchanter, and the jungler. Once you have found one of those categories of champions that seems appealing to you, it seems like something you would want to try out, I'm going to go ahead and give you 2 champion suggestions for each category. Alright, let's begin with the assassin. So I recommend Akali and Zed. I think they're 2 of the most fun and effective champions right now for the assassin category in Wild Rift. Next up, we got the mages. If you're trying to play a burst mage, I would recommend Ahri. I think she's really easy to use, and she's actually really, really good right now. If you're looking to main a control mage, I would highly recommend Orianna. She does take a little bit of time to learn and a lot of time to master, but when you get her down, she's very, very rewarding. Alright, so next category of champions is the fighters. So for the fighters, I would recommend Olaf. I think he's actually very beginner friendly and he's very, very good right now. And if you're looking for something that takes a little more skill but has a little more payoff, I would try Yasuo. I'm actually a Yasuo main myself. He does take a while to learn, but when you learn him, he is incredible. So yeah, Olaf first though. If you're new, definitely don't pick up Yasuo yet. Alright, so next category we have the tanks. If you're looking to pick up a juggernaut tank, I would strongly recommend Darius. He's not that hard to use, and he's really, really good. And if you're looking to try out one of those support type tanks, I would go ahead and give Blitzcrank a try because his hook is really satisfying to land, and when you do land that hook, your ADCarry is usually very happy with you. Alright, so if you're looking to pick up one of these enchanter supports, I would recommend picking up Nami or Seraphine. Nami provides a lot of utility, a lot of healing, a movement speed, she has a knock-up with her ultimate. Seraphine provides a lot of CC, you know, CC being crowd control and stuns with her abilities, and Seraphine also provides some shielding and utility, of course. There are actually a lot of really good marksmen, but I'm gonna go ahead and recommend Jhin because he's pretty straightforward, easy to use, and he's very strong. And if you're feeling a little bit like an assassin, you could go with Kai'Sa. Even though Kai'Sa is a marksman, a lot of her abilities are kind of assassin-like, and she does scale really well just like a normal ADCarry would. So she's an interesting pick. Okay, so for junglers, I would recommend Master Yi for the lower ranks like gold and below because he's not really punished as much early because Master Yi is very weak early. But later game is when he gets super strong. So Master Yi is very good in the lower ranks. If you're in the higher ranks and you're looking to carry your games, you gotta try Lee Sin. He has such an early game impact that he can get your team ahead and you can start snowballing with those early game kills. If you're just picking up jungle though, I definitely would not go with Lee Sin right away because he does take a lot of skill to start using effectively. That is going to be it for this video on how to find your main. I hope this did help you in some way. If it did, you know how to let me know. If you are interested in learning more about Wild Rift and talking with a community of people that share your similar interests, you can go ahead and join the Rift Discord server where there are many people in there talking about all things Wild Rift related. Alright, well it has been Gregory, and I'll see you next time on the Rift.